What's up, guys? This is Jago coming back again today with another Neverwinter video. This is the improved audio version of the previous Oathbound Paladin build video that I tried to do. Apologies for that previous video. The audio was utterly atrocious. So here it is again. I'm going to go into a bit more detail and explain a few of the things that have actually cropped up since then that I failed to mention the first time round. So here we go. I'll just dive straight into it because I'm sure those of you who watched that video the first time round were a bit irritated by the fact you couldn't really hear anything, so I'll just get straight into it and not waste any more time. My Oathbound Paladin build, I have gone with a human race. The reason for that is because I get those bonus feat points. If I just go over to this area here, so my race actually gives me an additional set of heroic feat points at levels 10, 15, and 20. That's quite useful. Yeah, it's a good perk. The other reason I didn't choose a different race, I think Dragonborn, I think, is another one that's meant to be pretty good for this one, but that has to be paid for, and I just wasn't prepared to fork out actual money or even spend too much time grinding for that one. So the Dragonborn might not be such a bad idea, but I've gone with human just because it was, well, first of all cheaper, but you get those additional feat points, which turn out to be quite useful in the end anyway. Other reason is you get an additional 3% defense, higher than any other race when you're a human as an Oathbound Paladin. Obviously, that's to some extent useful. I'll talk a bit more about what stats you really want to be focusing on as I go through the video. I actually chose the Oath of Protection Paladin build as well. The reason for this is that you get an additional 10% damage resistance, and you actually generate 500% more threat. Now, threat is that statistic that actually means that you are focused on more so by the enemies rather than the rest of your party. So in a dungeon group, if you're the person that has the most threat, the enemies are going to be focusing on you the most. And if you're a tank, that's exactly what you want, because you can take all of the aggro whilst everyone else who's just trying to deal the damage or do the heals, they're getting completely ignored, or the idea is that they are completely ignored. So more threat equals a better tank. I also get a portion of my, well, sorry, let me read this properly. When you take damage, you gain power proportional to the amount of damage you took. This bonus caps at 10% of your maximum hit points in power. Now, that's quite important, and that leads me straight on to the next point. You want to stack as many hit points as you can onto your character when you're a tank. The reason being, as it says in this particular description here, you get up to 10% of any damage that you take of your maximum hit points given back to you as power. That's quite useful when you're in a dungeon party, and say if you're a power share tank, that power goes back to your team if they're within a certain radius of you. I will go into more details about this and how to set that up in my build in just a few minutes. So I'll get on to the statistics and the ability scores. So with this one, I've gone with pretty much just stacking everything into Constitution. Constitution contributes to your maximum hit points. Again, really important. And also damage taken. You want to be taking a lot of damage as a tank. If you can't take damage, you're not going to get anywhere. You need to survive in that party so that everyone else can do their jobs accordingly. So you must be a survivable tank. More hit points, more damage taken that you can actually sustain, the better you're going to be. The other one that I stack is Dexterity, deflection chance, which means that actually you negate a certain amount of the damage that's actually given to you or dealt to you, and I believe it actually goes back to the person who dealt it. But you basically take a good proportion, well, a far less percentage of that damage dealt to you. So that's actually quite useful too. So I stack them in Constitution and Dexterity. I'm then going to talk about my stats. So as I said before, the more hit points you've got, which is indicated up here, in my case, I've got just over 200,000. I could have more, but there is something that actually stops me from doing that because of the guild that I'm in. Not their fault. I just chose the guild, and they seem like cool people. Just, unfortunately, they haven't got the boon that would help me out a little bit better, so I have to stack it on something else, which might answer a few people's questions about why my defense is so high. I'll get onto that in just a sec. So, yeah, the more hit points you've got, the better off you're going to be. Your power is going to go up because of the number of hit points you've got. So if we talk about that one again, you get 10%, up to 10% of the damage that you were dealt from your maximum hit points. So in this case, we're talking about 20,000 hit points worth of damage. That's going to translate as potentially, as I understand it, 20,000 extra power. That gets dealt back to your team if you're a power share tank. Pretty important. So the higher up your power is going to be, the better off you're going to be. Crit strike isn't all that useful, but well, as a tank. But if you're one of these that you just got a little bit bored of being a tank and not really dealing any damage, having a bit of extra crit isn't going to hurt. Armor pen is one thing that, as a tank, again, you're not going to really need much of if you're going in a dungeon. If you're soloing, having a bit of extra armor pen is going to help. I think the cap's something like 8,000 or 10,000, something like that. So having that up quite high will make it, you know, a bit more of an enjoyable experience for you if you are going around soloing, or if you're trying to be more of a DPS sort of Oathbound Paladin build. But I'm focusing mainly on being a tank. Recovery is important, mainly because you want your encounter powers to recharge very quickly so that you can keep yourself alive, because my encounter powers actually stack more additional, temporary hit points onto me, and it also actually allows me to debuff and buff my team, debuff the enemies and buff my team, sorry. So having recovery so I get those powers quicker means that I'm actually helping out the group a bit better and well, more frequently. So having your recovery up quite high is ideal. I think I'm around about the cap there, though. As far as I know, I think it's around about 8,500, I think, for recovery. I might be wrong. It's somewhere around that point, though. Defense, I've been pulled up on this by a few people, and I wish I didn't have to have my defense. Well, I mean, I could put the boon onto deflect or something else, but I've just found that this works quite well for me. The cap for damage taken, as last I checked, was actually 80%, and currently I am on 82%. I think I'm getting buffed by someone around in my my stronghold here, but it was around about the 80 to 81% mark at just standing. When my companion procs and I start to use all my my abilities, that does go up quite significantly, and I think I end up with something like 96% damage resistance, but the cap is 80, so that's wasted statistics, really. So ideally, you want to be getting your defense probably around about the 22, maybe, well, somewhere around the 20,000 mark. If your defense is around there, you're probably going to be okay. Whilst procced, obviously. So in combat, 20,000, around about that area, you should be fine. And like I say, I would have it, if I could, I would have had the, well, I'll get onto the boons in a second. We're going to go straight onto that in just a sec. So, yeah, defense is important, but not as high as I've got it, ideally, if you can help it. Right, feats. Let's look at the feats. So, for my feats, I've gone with Divine Action. Activating Divine Call now generates, in my case, as I've got 2 in there, 2% of your maximum AP. This is your superpower, basically, as a tank. My daily ability is actually the Bubble Shield, and it pretty much negates a lot of the damage that everyone else in the party's taking and deflects it onto me at a reduced rate. So the more AP I can generate quicker, the better off everyone's going to be, because I can put that shield up for longer and more frequently. So I've put 2 points in Divine Action. I've then put 3 points in Toughness, because I want some extra hit points. Always, always, always go for the hit points if you get a chance, guys. I've got 9% additional hit points there. Damage resistance, in this case, I've got it up to 2% increased by putting it into Light's Shield. I've then gone with 3 points in Exemplar's Haste. Your encounter powers recharge, in my case, 6% faster. Encounter powers, extra temporary hit points, more stuff to help out people, debuffing the enemies, buffing your allies. Very important that you get those up as quick as you can. In my case, your at-will powers deal 6% more damage. That's just a little bit of an additional perk, really. Again, you're not looking to go out, you know, dealing loads and loads of damage as a tank. The idea is that you're surviving all of the hits that they deal on you. But having it isn't going to hurt. It's not going to hurt. There's not really anything else I could have put it on to improve me any other way. So just having that extra 6% doesn't hurt at all. Next, we're going with Impassioned Pleas. You generate Divine Call Energy 6% faster. Divine Call Energy, well, we'll get on to Divine Call in a second. I'll tell you about what that actually does. It's quite a useful thing that I only really sort of worked out later down the line. Steadfast. Each point of Constitution now grants an additional 2.5% maximum hit points in my case. So if you saw me as I stacked all that Constitution into my character before, I'm basically getting another 2.5% additional hit points because of each point of Constitution that I put on. So I'm just getting more and more hit points basically through that. So that's why that's a good thing to do in cooperation with this particular feat. definitely a good idea there. Looking at the Justice Paragon path, this is the main one that I took, but there is something down in the Light Paragon path that is quite useful. I'll talk about that in just a sec, but to start with, Bound by Light, your control strength is increased by 10%. That's just useful. I think I've chose that over the other one because it works out more for me. Increased movement speed, whilst that's nice, that's obviously more useful to me, so I've just stacked it all in there. Okay, Flash of Light. Your encounter powers have 25% chance to reduce the cooldown of your nearby allies' encounter powers by 10%, meaning that everyone else is actually recharging their encounters better. Everyone else is able to deal more damage, debuff quicker, buff quicker. It's just helping everybody, so that's a good thing to have. Radiant Champion. Your very presence inspires your allies. When you have at least 2 other allies within 30 feet of you, all of you gain, in my case, 25% more movement speed and 5% cooldown reduction. I think that speaks for itself. Quite nice to have in a party. Your at-will powers have a 10% chance to trigger Echo on you. Echo makes your next encounter power instantly recharge all of your encounter powers. Hugely useful, that. You know, if you get the opportunity to have your encounter powers back immediately at a 10% chance, why not? Absolutely, why not? That's probably a really good thing to use for most tank builds, actually, I'd say. Activating a daily power causes you to become a prism for, in my case, 20 seconds. During this time, anytime you are healed, all allies within 30 feet of you are also healed for this amount. This effect will not trigger from heal over time effects. Well, that's, again, just quite good. If you're healed, everyone else gets healed for the same amount. So, great, why not? Keep everyone alive in the party for longer. Everyone gets to do more damage, and, yeah, everyone's happy. Vengeful Judge. This is the thing we're really going for here. This is the Divine Call now also applies Judge to yourself for 10 seconds. Judge increases your damage dealt by 35%, as well as reducing the cooldown on your currently recharging powers by 35%. Your encounter powers have a chance to immediately grant you a charge of Divine Call. Now, if we just look at that, where it says cooldown on your currently recharging powers by 35%, that's quite useful. So if I show you this, for example, I'm just going to use Templars Wrath here. Look at the bottom, I've got 10 seconds, 9 seconds. If I use Divine Call now, that immediately jumps down, and I get that encounter power much quicker. So that's actually a good thing to have. All right, back we go. Now, looking at the Light Paragon path, this is the last 3 things that we're going to look at. Gifts of Light, you heal for an additional 10% more. Obviously very useful for everyone else in the party. Next, we're going to go, you gain 10% more defense from equipment. Again, defense, we want that cap to be around about the 80 mark. If you can actually open up some slots in your enchantments rather than putting defense into that and use it to put deflect or more hit points on, that's going to help you out. Again, I just haven't got around to doing that for myself. And this is the main one if you want to be a sort of power share tank, really. Allies within 30 feet of you gain, in my case, 25% of your power. They must remain within 30 feet of you for at least 6 seconds to gain this buff. Now, when you're fighting a boss, you should all be within 30 feet of each other, and at least for 6 seconds, because you're going to be surrounding him. So long as you are tanking and he's focusing on you because you've got all that threat, everyone there is getting 25% of your power. Now, if I look at my power is at, just to make it easy, let's call it 40,000. Okay, they're getting an additional 10,000 power just from being near me. Now, that's quite low in retrospect, but obviously when I start to proc, and as my powers actually give me more and more power as different things start to occur, they obviously will get 25% of whatever that power is. So that is quite a useful feat to have. Next, we're going to move on to the boons. Now, if you weren't sure what I was talking about before with me having defense on and I would have liked it to go somewhere else, this is what I was talking about. The guild that you are in, the people running that guild will actually choose what boons to actually go for depending on what they think their cohort, their guild actually needs. Most of the time, they tend to go for the same thing. So in this case, in the offensive boon slot, they tend to go for power. Luckily, they have done in this case. So this has given me an additional up to 8,000 power from that. So I've definitely got that active because that's useful. You could have had group stat bonus or armor penetration bonus. I only use the armor penetration bonus one when I'm soloing. So I might switch to that when I'm going solo around some of the new campaign areas. Just because it allows me to deal more damage to the enemies and just get through it quicker. I tend to find that all that power that I've got, it doesn't translate unless I've got some armor penetration, so that's quite useful if you're soloing. But definitely if you're going through a group dungeon, I would stick it in the power bonus one so you get extra power to give to other people. Defense, this is the one I'm talking about. This is the problem. I've got a defense one here giving me an additional 8,000 defense. Ideally, I'd have had the hit point bonus, which gives me up to another 32,000 hit points. But sadly, this guild is not running that boon, so I'm missing out in that respect. So, I mean, I could use the lifesteal, I guess, but I don't really ever like drop health that much that I actually would require that. The other two, I just don't see them being particularly useful either, so I just thought having it in the defense bonus would be ideal. I could try and free up some slots elsewhere where I've got defense added in, and make most of that by putting in different stats. But yeah, it's just not worked out that way. So maybe I need to be looking at a different guild, or maybe they do something about those boons in the future. So I don't know at this stage. But I mean, ideally, I'd be putting it in the hit point bonus and just using all the other slots to try and get my defense to that cap. But in this case, that's why I'm using this one. Utility, if you are just starting out, I would definitely suggest using the experience points bonus one. If you're short on money, then obviously the treasure hunter one's quite useful. Group potion heal, kind of useful. Yeah, I can see why people would use that one. And then revive sickness, that seems to be quite a popular one as well, if you want to read that stat for us just a second. But I definitely hate taking too long getting around areas on my mount, so I've just put it in the mount speed bonus to get an extra 20% speed from that. And that's it, really. I don't play PvP all that much, but for the extra item level, I've just put it in the Overlord Slayer one. As I say, I very rarely play PvP. I'm more of a PvE kind of player, so if you're looking for a PvP build, sorry guys, I'm not your man. I'm also not going to have anything in this particular area here for the PvP campaign boons, because I don't play it. So I'll skip that one straight over, and we'll go straight into Sharendar. Sharendar, I have gone with an extra 400 defense. I could have gone with the power, to be fair. Looking back at that, I don't know why I didn't go for the power. I probably will go back and change that. Definitely, I would say stack some power in there. 400 deflect instead of 400 crit strike for a tank. I think that's a better option. Increased hit points, another 1600. Yes, definitely. When being struck by a foe, you have a chance to heal yourself for up to 20,000 hit points. I think that's a perfect idea as well. When you deflect an attack, you deal up to 3,000 damage on to your attacker. That's what I've chosen for the Sharendar campaign. I mean, you might decide that there's some other stuff in here that would work better for you. I've just found that this is pretty good. I actually got some advice from a person who was running a very, very good tank build about what to use for the boons, and I found that it works quite well for me as well. So, who was that actually? I don't even know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So let's move on to Dreadring. Dreadring, I've gone with the 250 power and 250 movement. I've gone with 400 regeneration over lifesteal. Regeneration is just your health coming back by itself rather than getting healed, and that you're sort of healing yourself with regeneration, as I understand it. I've then gone with 3% deflect chance, and then when taking damage, you have a chance to deal up to 20,000 hit points over a few seconds. Sorry, you have a chance to heal up to 20,000 hit points over a few seconds. After this effect ends, you have 4,000 more defense for 10 seconds. That's quite useful. I think it speaks for itself, doesn't it? Absolutely speaks for itself, so I would choose that one definitely. And then for the last one, I've gone with when you deal damage, you gain a stack of madness. When you reach 50 stacks of madness, you gain 4,000 power, 4,000 lifesteal, and 4,000 regen. 10 seconds after gaining this bonus, your stacks are reset. You may only gain 1 stack of madness per second. That's, well, I mean, you can see that for yourself. That seems quite useful. The lifesteal for me, not just as useful, again, because I don't really drop health very much. Regen, again, don't really drop health very much, so regen just gets wasted. But the 4,000 power, absolutely useful. Absolutely the best thing you could take for me. Icewind Dale. 4,000 AoE resist over the 4,000. I keep saying 4,000, guys. If you're reading it, it's 400. I mean 400. 400 AoE resist over the 400 combat advantage bonus. I've just gone with that because it stops me from actually being controlled by other people, so I can actually keep people healed and the attention on me with all the threats. So AoE resist over combat advantage bonus, because I think that's just about dealing more damage if you stood in a particular place. Like if you're behind the enemy that you're attacking, you'll do more damage. But my job isn't to do damage; it's to be a tank. So I've gone with the AoE resist, so I can actually tank for longer without being interrupted. You gain 400 incoming healing bonus over you gain 400 stamina gain. I mean that's a pretty That's pretty bland, to be fair. I've gone with the healing bonus because it makes more sense than the stamina gain. I don't really use the stamina all that much, just in little jibs and jabs. You gain 400 recovery. Recovery, I'll take that every day over severity, critical severity, because you want those powers to be recharged faster. I've then gone with you gain up to 2,000 power based on how much stamina or guard you are missing. I say I don't use that much stamina. I use stamina depending on what dungeon I'm in and if people are actually struggling. My stamina is used up by basically keeping people... I better just have a look at that. Let's just have a quick look at that. So, Sanctuary is what I actually use up all my stamina on. So, you erect a zone of safety where you gain 30% increased damage resistance and allies gain 10% increased damage resistance and are rapidly healed. You are immune to some control effects whilst maintaining this zone. And actually, if you look further down, it says, because I'm Oath of Protection, you gain 80% damage resistance and allies gain 20% damage resistance. So that's why I've gone with that. It just keeps people alive for longer in a situation where they actually might be losing some health quite quickly. So that's why I've gone with that. Where was I on to there? Recovery. There we go. So, Winter's Bounty, just to finish off the Icewind Dale boons. Chance to gain 10% action points when killing a target. That's what I've gone with for that one. Underdark campaign. I'll just try and get through these a bit quicker. You gain 400 defense and 1,600 hit points. Looking at that, I'd probably go for the power one if I respect it. I would definitely go for that, guys. Power over defense every day. You can get defense from just about anything. You gain 400 lifesteal, over 400 crit strike, and 1,600 hit points. This is quite a good campaign for the hit point gain. 1,200 regeneration over combat advantage damage. That makes sense again. Control effects will now have 5% shorter durations when applied to you. Quite helpful if you're trying to tank still for longer without being interrupted. And gain 10% damage versus demons. I hate demons. They used to take forever to kill, so that extra 10% is quite useful. Tyranny of Dragons. This is a hard one to complete. Grant 1,600 hit points. Grant 400 deflect. 400 defense over the armor penetration. I'd say that's probably worthwhile. Grant 400 regen over lifesteal rating. And in my case, I've put all 3 points of this into increased control strength. So 15% increased control strength from that. Maze Engine, I've gone with 400 incoming healing bonus over the lifesteal severity. I've gone with control effects will now have 5% shorter durations when applied to you. You now gain action points 3% faster in the next one. Your healing spells have a chance to heal allies around you for 20,000 hit points. It speaks for itself. Very good idea. Elemental Evil. You gain 300 defense. Again, power. I've gone with defense every time, guys. Go with power. Makes more sense. Go with power. You gain 400 regen and 2,000 hit points. 400 recovery and 2,000 hit points. And in my case, I've gone with you're taking down. When taking damage, you have a chance to heal up to 24,000 hit points over a few seconds. After this effect ends, your recovery is increased by 1,000 for 10 seconds. Again, it speaks for itself. Very good. Storm King's Thunder. I'm getting to the end of them now, I think. I've not actually done the most recent updates and campaign boons, mainly because I've just been playing other stuff, so I'll get onto this eventually. I didn't mention that this is an end game. This is not an end game build, okay? I certainly don't, state that this is the best tank in the game. This is just my personal tank build, just in case you're trying to look for the best one. I'm not going to say it is. It might be. But, I'm sure there's other tanks out there that can do a better job than me. But I seem to manage fine. You gain 2% control resistance and 1,000 hit points from this particular boon. Next one, I've gone with 400 incoming healing bonus and 2% Everfrost damage resistance. That will make more sense when you actually get to that campaign if you've not got there yet. If not, you'll understand that it's quite irritating to have to worry about it, but it does help out. You gain up to 2,000 recovery based on how much stamina or guard you are missing. Your maximum hit points is increased by 3,200 and 2% Everfrost resistance again. I've then put 1 point in this. When healing allies, your healing spells have a chance to damage up to 5 enemies near the target for up to 4,000 damage. And then 2 points in this one. When you deflect an attack, you deal up to 6,000 damage to your attacker. That's what I've got for that one. Cloaked Ascendancy, we'll get in there now. With this one, I've gone with when you kill an enemy, you have a chance to emit an aura of hope that boosts AP gain for all allies within 25 feet of your for 10 seconds. It speaks for itself. Everyone wants action point gain so they can do more damage and get their dailies up. Yeah, just helps out everybody. You gain 2% incoming healing bonus and another 1,000 hit points over the 2% critical strike severity. Again, you're a tank. Incoming healing bonus over severity every day. You gain 500 recovery and 2,000 hit points. And the last one for this one, when you deflect an attack, you regain up to 8,000 hit points. This effect can only happen once every 10 seconds. Anytime you can get hit points back, guys, just take it. If you do take a hit and it takes off quite a bit, anything that you can do to recover those hit points quickly, it's going to keep you alive longer and make you a better tank. Jungles of Chult, this is the last one now. I've gone with, and looking back at this, I realised that actually I could have nabbed myself, not a lot, but a few more hit points. I would suggest putting one. Well, you've got 3 points in this area here, so I would put one in each. Like I wouldn't put 3 in one. That doesn't make sense to me, because you could get more hit points. Okay, so looking back at this, I would have definitely chosen maybe 1 in Beast's Burden to do more damage to dinosaurs, because that would give me 800 maximum hit points from that. I would then have put another one in this to gain a bit more power. That's another 800 hit points. That's 1,600. And I would put another one in this one to get some more deflect. That's another 800. That's 2,400 hit points overall. If you put 2... I mean, the way I've got it, I've got 2,000 hit points. But if I put 3 in the same one, I only get 1,600. So you do the math, guys. You put 1 in each, you get more hit points overall. Yes, okay, you don't get quite as much of the other statistics, but hit points is what we're mainly going for, because that's what's going to make us a better tank. So 1 in each of those would be my suggestion there. Not what I've done here and put 2 in one, maybe 1 in the other. That said, I'm still getting 2,000 hit points, and it's only a small drop if that, but more helps. The last one here, chance on hit to apply Lingering Curse to your target, which lasts for 10 seconds. Can be applied once per 60 seconds. When a target which has Lingering Curse is killed, its soul explodes out at a random enemy within 20 feet, causing 30,000 damage and applying Lingering Curse. Additional tiers of this boon add 15,000 damage to the soul explosion. Just a nice little thing to have. And that is the boons. We're now going to move on to companions. My companions need a lot of work. That is one thing I will say. Certainly in terms of the equipment that I've got. I haven't quite found the right companion that would give me the best slots for the equipment. Quite a lot of people go with the Con Artist because it has 3 slots for rings and some ridiculous rings out there that would actually increase the companion stats quite immensely. But the main thing about companions that I would suggest you do is make sure that when you do have a companion and you've got these runestone slots, I would put bonding runestones in them. Now, these got nerfed a couple of updates back to only give out so much of this power back to you, or these statistics back to you. That said, if you've got them fairly high, it's still quite a lot of statistics that are coming back to you. So let's just read this a little bit. When your companion activates a power, it will grant you Companion's Gift, which grants you 60% of your companion stats for 30 seconds. Now, it's 60% because I've got this bonding runestone up to rank 13. That goes up again if I manage to get it to rank 14. Okay. Additionally, it will give me 900 power because it's an offensive slot. I've got the same thing here with this one and the same thing here with that one. Now, you do the math, guys. 60% times 3, 240. No, can't do math. I can't do the math, so you do it instead. 180%, I think it is. 180% of my companion stats currently come back to me. So all of this comes back to me. The only thing that doesn't, sadly, is the hit points that my character has. So he's got about 30.4 thousand hit points. That would have been quite ideal to have, but sadly it doesn't give that to me. It's just the rest of these stats down here. That's why you want the equipment and the enchantments within the equipment to be fairly high so that you're getting the right stats for you. Okay, but I'm getting, just from these 3, I'm getting 2,700 power. So you can see why it's quite useful to have these bonding runestones. If you can get it up to Legendary, you also get an additional 16% of the companion's ratings. So, you know, if you can get it up to this orangey sort of colour at the top, then that's going to help you out again. And I think each additional one that you actually get to Legendary will give you more of your companion stats again. So keep that in mind. I've gone with the main one I've gone with is a Shadow Demon. A deflection does almost no damage and does 6,000 damage to the source of the deflection. Of the source of the deflected attack once every 30 seconds. Less damage is returned to you if you're below level 70. The yeah, sorry guys, I'm hardly awake. This cooldown on this effect is reduced to 20 seconds whilst under the effect of Underdark. Okay, so that's just one particular area of the game. So that's what I've gone with for now. I probably would eventually move to a con artist when I can get him up to a decent level, but I do quite like this one. He looks cool, and that additional 6,000 damage, you know, at deflects just makes it much better for me. The next one I've gone with is a Rust Monster, and that gives me 25% chance to inflict a 5% damage debuff on attackers and stacks up to 3 times. So that's 15% damage debuff potentially. I've then gone with I think it's called an Agon. I'm not 100% sure on the spelling or pronunciation. Increases my maximum hit points by 5%. Do the math, guys. I've got about 200,000 hit points. 5% of that gets added back to me again. Or rather, that actually makes up part of the 200,000, actually, yeah. I wish it would give me another 5% of that. That would be absolutely brilliant. Right, I've then got, I think this is a Siege Master. I wish it said the names of these things next to it. I can't see it if it does. Deal another 4% increased damage. This effect is increased to 8% whilst on the Stronghold map. So currently I'm on the Stronghold map. I'd get an extra 8% damage to the enemies within this area. Just nice to have. I don't really have anything else to put in this place. I used to love the Yeti, because the Yeti used to make you grow and actually do more damage again, but apparently it's broken. I don't know if it's been fixed, but yeah. If the Yeti has been fixed, please let me know, and I probably will put that back on, because I used to love that thing. Last one here, I've got the Blacksmith. 25% chance to reflect 10% of damage taken. If the same target is hit 4 times, it will reflect 3 times the damage taken. Just a nice one to have again, just getting rid of that damage from yourself and adding it onto someone else. Good, good, good. Okay, moving on to mounts. Now, what I would suggest for this one is if you can get a legendary mount, obviously it's going to help you because you've got a combat power there. I haven't yet got a legendary mount for this character. A T-Rex would be ideal, certainly if you are at the stage of needing to do the Tomb of the Nine Gods dungeon, because that T-Rex is quite helpful right at the very last boss to get rid of some of those souls that show up and pretty much nuke you if he collects too many of them. You'll see what I mean when you get into the dungeon if you don't know what I'm talking about. But if you have a T-Rex mount for that particular mount is very, very useful for that, and it also gives you, I think, a good amount of power, depending on which one you choose. I think they both give power, actually. The other one I would choose, if not, would be a Tensor's Disc. I can't think of any others, to be honest with you. Maybe you guys know some better legendary mounts for the Flail Snail. I think there's a Flail Snail, a variety of Flail Snail that actually may be quite useful. I've heard a few people tell me that, but I'm looking for that T-Rex mainly because it looks cool, and the second reason is because it gives me that ability to get rid of souls quicker in the Tomb of the Nine Gods dungeon. So that's why I would go with that. In terms of the Insignia Blessings, though, I would go with Survivor's Blessing if you can. Whenever you deflect an attack, you are healed for 3% of your maximum hit points over 4 seconds. That's a good one to have. Assassin's Covenant. You lose 10% of your defense, deflection, and lifesteal, and gain the combination of lost stats as power. More power means more to share with everybody else. Good idea. Protector's Camaraderie. Whenever your summoned companion attacks, you gain 3% of your power and defense for 10 seconds. This effect can stack up to 4 times, meaning, trying to do the math, 12% of your power and defense for 10 seconds. Good idea. Gladiator's Guile. When your stamina is above 75%, you move 15% faster. When your stamina is below 25%, you gain 50% of your power as stamina gain. That's just about getting up that... what's it called? I forget what it's called. The left stick power, basically. You get that back for a little bit longer if you're actually below 25%, so it just comes back quicker. Good idea. Artificer's Persuasion. Whenever you use an artifact power, your recovery, movement, action point gain, and stamina gain are increased by 10% of your power for 15 seconds. It shows you there, plus 3,500 recovery, movement, action point gain, and stamina gain. Why not? Absolutely great idea. In terms of the insignias themselves, these are a little bit all over the place. I have got a couple of defense ones in here. I can't really remember which ones I was going to actually change these for, but the extra 400 isn't going to hurt. And a little bit of recovery in there. You'll spot that most of these are prosperity ones, which gives me more hit points, more glory, more gold, and experience gained. But mainly it's the hit points that I'm going for. For just those 3 there, doing the math, that's another 2,400 hit points just for those 3, plus another 2 in that one, and then a little bit more recovery, I believe. Yeah, So it's mainly recovery and mainly hit points that I've gone for in here, and I do get a bit of control bonus as a bonus as well. So, but yeah, I would mainly. I mean, if there are any of them that actually give power, I would use those two. So I'll probably stack a load of power in here instead of the defense ones. Now that I think about it, maybe getting rid of a few of these recovery ones and get some more power as well. I would definitely consider that. Okay, moving on to the last few things now, guys. I'm going to talk about my gear. I have gone mostly with the primal set here, so because this just seems to be the best in slot at the moment. There may be some new stuff out because of the new Lost City of Omu update, but I've not done very much on it. So maybe you guys know better. But for me, at the time when I was making this particular or playing frequently, this was the best stuff to put in slot for now. So I've gone with mostly primal equipment of the restoration variety. So you can see there, 16,000 hit points is the main thing I'm worried about. Another 900 damage. I'm getting some defense in there. I'm also using a utility slot for the movement. I'm using, well, I'll talk about the enchantments afterwards. So I'm using a primal head. I'm using primal restoration Ibhendis, I think they're called, but for the arms, basically. You see more power, more hit points, more power, more crit, more defense. It's pretty much the same stats, and they all actually have their own little sort of equip power here as well. When you damage or heal your target for more than 15% of your maximum hit points in a single blow, you gain 1% power for 10 seconds. I don't see how that's going to be particularly helpful for me, because I can't see how I'm going to actually deal 15% of my hit points worth of damage to somebody in a single blow. Well, maybe actually. It probably happens more than I think about it, than I think it does. But yeah, for me, it's more about having those extra hit points, and this at the moment is giving you the most hit points per piece of equipment. I would also encourage you to use armor in reinforcement. Oh, what are they called? Armor reinforcements, basically, which actually add more stats to your armor pieces as well. You can do it for your shirt, your trousers, pretty much any piece on here. I think except rings. I'm not sure. There's different things for that, reinforcement kits, and it just adds extra stats that you might be missing or were a bit low on, and it gives you a little bit more item level as well. So quite useful there. But this mainly is for the hit points. All these restoration items. All these primal items. Same thing for the feet. I've gone with restoration, the primal restoration for that. You can see yourself, all the stats are pretty much the same ones on each of these items. The only one I didn't go with for this is the primal chest piece, just because I found this particular one that I get from the what's it called? The I've forgotten the penultimate update. The one before the Lost City of Omu, anyway. The one from that. Martyr's Placard, I actually find that this actually has a better equip power. For every 5 seconds you're in combat, you gain 100 defense. If you stay in combat for longer than 2 minutes, this ability will no longer be active. I probably will stick using that if I do end up dropping and changing my guild, so that I can have those hit point ones instead. If my defense drops too low, I will probably end up still using this. If not, I do have the primal chest piece, and I'll probably switch in for that, because again, it gives me the extra hit points. And in this case, this one actually gives me 29,000 maximum hit points, as well as 14 AC, a little bit more power, 2,000 recovery, which is immense, and then a little bit of defense. And I will lose a bit of those stats actually if I go with the other one. So that is another reason why I'm going with this instead of the primal one. If I'm going to, well, let's go over to this bit here. I'm going to look at the neck piece next, so I'm going with the Cloak of the Protector. Now, this is part of a set, the Great Protector set. If I actually go and inspect this, the Great Protector set, if I get a set of 2, I get 500 defense, but if I get a set of 3, it's an extra 10,000 hit points. Need I say more? If you get all 3 pieces, this is what you get for it. So I've got the Cloak of the Protector, which you see here. I've got the Greater Plated Band of Constitution, which is part of that same set. And I've also got the Waters of Elazad as my artifact in slot, which gives me an extra 1,000 recovery, defense, and 600 regen. That leads me quite nicely onto the artifacts, actually, so I'll talk about these next. My main artifact that I've gone with is the Sigil of the Devoted. So if you've not got a Cleric yet, I would suggest get it up to 60, so you can get this particular Sigil unlocked for your Paladin. Because what this does is allows you to recover your action points a lot faster, and you also heal yourself to an extent. But if you recover your action points a lot quicker, it means that you can use your bubble to protect the rest of your team more frequently and for more often. So that's why I go with that. I've then gone with the Symbol of Fire, which gives me another 1,000 power and another 600 recovery and another 1,000 defense. And then I've gone with the Sigil of the Oathbound Paladin because it gives me another 4,000 hit points, 1,000 power, and 600 AoE resist. The rings is something that I've not done very much on, so I've just picked the best in slot that I had at the time. Ring of the Beast Slayer, that gives me some crit strike and some recovery. That was the main reason I actually wanted to use that, because the recovery was quite necessary for me at the time. This one, though, I think I got this one from the Throne of the Dwarven Gods skirmish, I think it is, where I got this one. When hit by a foe, you gain 115 defense for 4 seconds. This effect can stack a maximum of 10 times, equaling 1,150 defense for 4 seconds, and does not affect companions. Okay. It also gives me another, well, it's got an offensive and defensive slot in which I've put 500 power and 600 defense. But that's quite useful at the time where I had a little bit less defense. This was quite good. I may well change that out again because I don't need as much defense as my character currently has. I don't know quite what rings I'd probably put in place here, to be fair. I probably would end up picking a couple of the primal ones because, again, they're probably best in slot. But for the time at which I actually was collecting these rings, this was the one I was really, really focusing on. But a +5 would have been better. Shirt and trousers. So the shirt, well, I basically picked the same sort of set. So shirt of the Chiltern Merchant and pants of the Chiltern Merchant. Best in slot, basically, at the time. Best in slot. So you gain 150 recovery for each ally in your team. It also gives you 358 crit strike and 462 defense. And this one gives me 15 lifesteal for each % of health you are missing. Not particularly important, but it was best in slot, so I get another 1,100 maximum hit points, pretty much. 400 armor pen, and another 104 defense, and has a defensive slot, so I've just put more defense in that. My weapons, I have gone with the Life-Forged set, which you get from the Cloaked Ascendancy campaign. Mainly because they were just the easiest to collect at the time. I've heard a lot of people talking about the Mastercraft weapons, I think they are. I think the one that you get from the Sea of Moving Ice campaign, they were meant to be pretty decent weapons, but took a long time to grind and actually get a hold of and upgrade. So I went with these instead. I haven't actually delved too deeply into the very latest weapons, but they don't look too bad, actually. So maybe save yourself the time, and if you've gone right to the very last update, try and get those instead, because they don't look like they should be too far off what I would suggest for a tank anyway. I mean, I've got the Life-Forged set, and the reason for that is, if I just quickly inspect that, the Life-Forged set, if you get the set of 2, when you use an encounter power, you become fortified, which increases your defense by 5% and adds 10% of your defense to your power for 10 seconds. So basically gives you more power. That makes sense to me. It makes complete sense to me, but you can only use fortified once every 30 seconds. That's okay. I think that's probably a decent set to have. I don't know about the other ones. As I say, I've not really ventured into it too much, and the one thing I hate about any game is grinding, so I wasn't prepared to do so for any longer than I had to. So this set was just the most obtainable over a short period of time. And actually, the Cloaked Ascendancy DLC wasn't too bad. Not DLC, sorry. The update wasn't too bad. So I would go with this if you're going to struggle to get anything else. Otherwise, yeah, give it a look. The new weapons from the new update. Okay, looking at enchantments next. I'm going to talk about my armor enchantment for starters. I am using the Negation. I've got it up to Transcendent at the minute. I've just not had the time to actually find the right stuff to upgrade it further. It's ready to go. I just haven't got the stuff yet. Let's have a look at this enchantment. When receiving damage, each hit stacks a 3.5% increase to your damage resistance, a 1% increase to your incoming healing, and a 1% increase to your recovery for 10 seconds. This effect can stack a maximum of 10 times. It basically just makes me more and more resistant to damage. The further up I can actually upgrade this, the better it's going to be for me. So I would definitely go with Negation. I don't know of many others that would work. I think Bark Shield isn't meant to be too bad, but this is definitely the one I've gone for. Transcendent Negation is what I've currently got in stock in slot.
looking at the weapon enchantment now. I am using the Frost enchantment. I was using Lightning up until the point they actually nerfed it. And Lightning is so cool to use and watch, actually. It just damages everybody in a very, very sort of short, well, not short area. It actually seems to damage everybody. I tended to find that I was aggroing other groups of enemies that were actually out of sort of aggro range, but because of the Lightning enchantment, it would actually attract them as it sort of chains to each other. So that was really good. The downside was that it actually got nerfed and became less and less useful for me. And I was thinking, if I can sell it now, I might be able to get some AD back and actually get something better, which has led me to actually now use the Frost enchantment. I have another friend who plays this game, Huggy Bear Gaming. If you've not already checked out his channel, check it out. He's been a very, very good friend to me. He's helped me out with a lot of my videos. I say a lot of my videos, I've got like 4. He's helped me out with my videos. And actually he uses a Frost enchantment as well. And these actually do stack apparently. So let's just read the description. You deal an additional, in my case, 29% of weapon damage as cold damage with your powers. In addition, you apply a 30% slow and 20% recharge speed reduction to your target for 10 seconds. Non-player targets are also disabled for 4 seconds. This effect may occur no more than once every 20 seconds. That does stack with everybody else who's got one. So if someone else near you has got another perfect Frost enchantment, as I understand it, each of those stats would then be doubled, apart from the times. So 29 would go to, say, what would that be? 58%, etc., etc. So having more people with Frost enchantments in your group is going to help out, and that's why we've gone with that. As per his suggestions. Now, in terms of the enchantment slots for each of these, I'm gonna just give a rule of thumb here. In the utility slots, once you've got yourself to level 70, I tend to go with anything that gives me more movement. So, utility slots, I'll put in dark enchantments because it gives me more movement. In a defensive slot, up until recently, I've been sort of just thinking, stacking more defense because I need defense, so I use Azure enchantments in defensive slots to get more of that. In offensive slots, I've been using Radiance, I believe. Let's just have a look in here. Yeah, I've been using Radiance in the offensive slots because that gives me more power, and that's mainly what I've been trying to focus on. Occasionally I'll put in a silvery one in an offensive slot. Let's see if I've got one around here somewhere. I'm sure I do. Was there one on there? Don't know where I keep them. No, not on there. Maybe it's in one of these rings. Yeah, there we go. Silvery enchantment. In an offensive slot, it actually gives me more recovery. So I used that just to get my recovery up a little bit more, but if I had enough recovery, I would definitely choose power instead, so I'd put a Radiant in there, which I probably will do eventually. So that's it for the enchantments, pretty much. So just a quick recap. Utilities, in my case, dark enchantments. Offensive ones, if you can, use Radiant. If you're struggling for recovery, use a silvery. And in defense, if you're struggling for defense, I would probably use an Azure. But if you can find the one that gives you deflect, I'd probably go with that instead if your defense is already at the cap. Very last thing then, to finish this off, we'll talk about my powers. Now, the powers that I use, I've got Radiant Strike on my left trigger. This actually allows me to sort of charge at the enemies just to get into combat a bit quicker ahead of the rest of my group. And it actually does, let's just see. Your armor penetration and damage is increased by 5% for 15 seconds. So as I use that attack and lunge into the group of enemies, I actually have my armor penetration and damage increased for the first 15 seconds of that particular attack. So that helps me to actually do more damage, and I get the aggro quicker because I've just lunged into them, and they are focused on me, so everyone else can start to damage them as well. So it just helps out. It gets you into the fight a bit quicker, this Radiant Strike, and increases your damage output. In one of my daily attacks that I use, this is more for a DPS, more of a sort of solo-y sort of gameplay. I've used Divine Judgment, which does a huge attack on a few enemies within a close radius. So you summon a Deific, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Deific Vengeance on your foes, causing incredible damage in a small area around the target. And actually, I've got it all the way up to rank 4, so I get an additional 45% damage done from that particular attack. I've then gone with Aura of Courage as one of my class features. You and your allies within 30 feet of you deal 1% of your maximum hit points as bonus radiant damage, and I've actually increased that by another 30%. Looking down here, class mechanics. So this is the Divine Call. Let's just read this really quickly. So this is the one that actually, due to one of the boons, or sorry, the feats that I've got in place, it actually recharges my encounter powers quicker. It actually knocks off the time like by 35%. So I'm just reading this through now. Where am I looking? Okay, so I went with Oath of Protection. You taunt all foes within 30 inch area, 30 feet. I think it's 30 feet. 30 feet area and gain 10% increased damage resistance for 10 seconds. You reflect 5% of incoming damage back to the attackers whilst this effect is active. Maximum 5% of your maximum hit points. I think you can speak for it. It speaks for itself there. Okay. When I'm definitely running dungeons, I tend to use Bane. You place a holy mark on a target. This target deals 10% less damage and takes 10% more damage for 10 seconds. This effect can be stacked up to 3 times because you've got 3 charges. So if you go bang, 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 get 3 charges straight onto the boss that you're fighting, he's doing 30% less damage and he's taking 30% more damage by everybody in your party. Paladins who have taken an Oath of Devotion can apply this. Right, well, I've not taken a Path of Devotion. I've taken the Oath of Protection, so that doesn't actually apply to me. Looking next, I have Oath Strike. This is the main attack that I will use, my main at will. Oath of Protection. The final strike of this power forces the target to attack you for 3 seconds. Players deal 75% less damage to other targets for 3 seconds. Okay, that's what you do. That's what you get from doing that. So I just use that to try and keep the target's attention on me, along with that 500% threat that I should be dealing. The main one that I use as I sort of right after I actually lunge into the attack using that first power that I explained at the top, the next thing I'll use is Templars Wrath, because you unleash a storm of holy energy, dealing heavy damage to allies, all nearby foes, and stunning them. So they are stunned for a few seconds. If I'm an Oath of Protection, so I gain temporary hit points equal to 300% of the damage dealt. So I get pretty much immediate temporary hit points just from that. And the more hit points that I've got, obviously the higher up that goes as well. Okay, so Templars Wrath is one of the main ones. I would use that even if you're doing a DPS build, because it can just stun the enemies and you can just go straight into actually damaging them. What I would swap out one of my attacks for would be Burning Light if you are doing DPS, because this actually gives you a lot of AP very, very quickly. And actually it does do a lot of damage when you get it up to this high, and to multiple enemies as well. You can read it from that description there. Where was it up to? Templars Wrath. Where are we up to next? Divine Protector. This is the bubble shield. 3 seconds. For 3 seconds, you shield all allies from harm. You redirect 60% of damage they would take to yourself, and damage you would take whilst this effect is active is reduced by 60%. So you take 60% of 60%. Sorry, you take 40% of the 60% of damage that your friends would take, which means that they basically take none, and you take very, very little of that again. So that's why being a bubble tank is particularly useful. And if you've got a lot of hit points, you can survive and make that happen for a lot longer. Okay. Next, I'm going to talk about the Circle of Power. This is another one that you can use to debuff the people around you and actually buff the people within it. So it puts down... Well, let's just read it. You and allies within the Circle of Power also gain 25% damage resistance. You generate a zone of control 30 feet wide. This zone improves all damage you deal by 30% and lasts for 10 seconds. That's what I go with for that. So I would stack that with Bane, just to make sure that we're dealing as much damage as we can and that the enemies aren't dealing too much damage to us. Okay, guys. That is pretty much it. I think that's it to do with my build. If you've got any suggestions about how this build could be better, please let me know. If you think that there's something I haven't explained particularly well, please, again, let me show. Oh, goodness me, I've just missed something. Yeah, I've just seen. Aura of Radiance is the other class feature that I've got in slots. So foes within 30 feet of you take damage for every 3 seconds. This damage builds bonus threat. More threat means more attention on me, means everyone else can do damage instead of, taking damage. I've increased that up to another 30% as well by getting it to rank 4. So that's it. That's the lot. If there's anything that's not clear, guys, please comment below. like and subscribe to my channel and the video. Sorry, like the video, subscribe to the channel. And let me know if there's anything else I can do to help with this particular build, or if anything that you can do to improve on it. Let me know again. If you're in a guild, by the way, who are looking for tanks who have got the hit point bonus, please again let me know, because I might even be interested in joining you so I can get that bonus. Thanks again, guys. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.